So I went to see Batman last night, The Batman. When I was sitting in the theater waiting for the movie to start, I was sitting next to these teenagers, and for reference, I'm a 35-year-old, almost 36-year-old mother of one. I'm sitting there scrolling through my phone because I'm trying to plan my daughter is 2.5, so I'm trying to plan her Easter basket for this year. And these teenagers, like being teenagers next to me, and thinking about how the Batman is now my age, and I'm just sitting there like feeling so old and depressed for like a minute. Anyway, also the movie theater was absolutely packed. I've not been in a theater with that many people in a long time, and I knew that this was a big movie, but I also remember when one of the last Batman movies came out about what happened to that movie theater in Colorado. So I started feeling panicky because I'm psyching myself out. I'm like, okay, something happens. Do I crawl under the chairs and play dead? Do I because there's like ground seating, and then I was a little bit of a tear up from that. So it's like you'd have to jump this wall to get down to the ground. It wouldn't be down very far. But I was kind of in the middle of both of the exits because when I pick my tickets for the movie, I try to be like in the center of the screen and as far back as possible, but like the ones far back were already booked. And so I'm just like sitting there like figuring out what I would do just in case. So I'm sitting there like depressed about like being old, and also planning my escape in case like someone attacked the movie theater. Because why am I like that? I don't know. That's just how I am. Anyway, if you don't know, which I don't see how you wouldn't, but I guess for the purpose of the video, I will kind of just like do a summary of the characters. So the Batman is Robert Pattinson, a la Twilight, other independent movies. Catwoman is Zoe Kravitz. Andy Serkis is Alfred. I didn't know who this person was. Apparently he was in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And the Penguin is played by Colin Farrell. Paul Dano is the Riddler. I will always remember him. The first time I ever saw him in anything was in There Will Be Blood, and he was so good in that movie. Jeffrey Wright as James Gordon. He was in Hunger Games and Westworld. I've only ever seen like a couple scenes from a Hunger Games movie. Couldn't tell you which one it was. And from what I hear from Westworld, I want to see it, but I've never seen it. And then, fun fact, I don't know how many people picked up on this, but Peter Sarsgaard played Gil Colson, which was the DA in this movie. His wife, Maggie Gyllenhaal, she played is it Rachel Dawson? I don't know the name, but it was like Katie Holmes played her in the first movie, and then like Tom Cruise I heard got her fired. So Maggie Gyllenhaal played that role in The Dark Knight, and now her husband is in like the new reboot of Batman. I thought that was an interesting connection. I almost didn't recognize him. Obviously he's a lot older than he was in the early 2000s, and people age. It's a natural thing, but I almost didn't recognize him. I would say that this is a pretty standard Batman movie. It's exactly what you would expect from a Batman movie. It's the early years, so I guess that's the purpose of doing this movie. It's like the first couple years that he is Batman, so it's showing his growing pains and kind of like how he gets his start. It's supposed to be darker and similar to The Dark Knight, but like a less experienced Batman basically. So you're also going to see more of the backstory of his parents, his family in general, which, the first Batman movie, or the first Batman anything that I saw was the Tim Burton Batman with Michael Keaton. And all we ever knew, because I'm a casual Batman fan, like of all the superheroes, Batman's my favorite. I grew up on that. But I'm not like a Batman fanatic. So I'm a very casual Batman fan, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But from what I understand in the past, at least in the movies, I don't know about comic books, I've never seen the comic books, but in the past, we've never really like known much about his backstory except for the fact he comes from a rich family. And so in this movie, you get a little bit more of like what his family is like. It's part of the plot. You get more of a backstory to Catwoman as well. And the movie is very action-packed. You have big fight scenes, car chases, massive city destruction. The movie is very long. It's a 3-hour-long movie, but it did keep my attention the whole time. The Riddler is, played by Paul Dano. He's a good villain. He's definitely a different take on the Riddler than the more campy version that Jim Carrey did in, was it Batman Forever? I don't remember. That's not one of the ones I rewatch. But I would recommend seeing this movie. It's not something that I would rewatch, but I think for what it is and just going to go see it if you're curious, it's worth it to do that. So I saw an article that was ranking Batmans, and kind of where Robert Pattinson falls in it and everything. Personally, of course, as you might predict, and I've said this before when I've done the trailer reactions, but Tim Burton's Batman, Michael Keaton's Batman, is my favorite forever and ever. I will always rewatch that movie. It's something I grew up watching that. It's part of my childhood. It's nostalgic. Will always be my favorite. Jack Nicholson will always be my favorite Joker. From what I remember, I kind of liked Val Kilmer as Batman, but again, and I just randomly remembered that was the Batman that Nicole Kidman was in. Didn't care for George Clooney. This will be a very unpopular opinion, but I did not care for Christian Bale's Batman. The voice, someone can explain that, might have to explain that to me. I don't understand the voice. The voice it made me cringe so bad. Christian Bale's Batman voice. Like, why? Just why? But I think that for this Batman, Robert Pattinson was a good choice. I think it's setting itself up to be probably another trilogy. If they come out with more, which this was a huge success, made a lot of money already, I will see future sequels. I anticipate they will be about the same quality, and it's kind of like just to watch once to see what it's about, and probably won't be rewatching for me. It would be nice if people just in general for movies would come out with original ideas. That is why I'm looking forward to seeing Nope in July. It looks very original. Probably aliens, but I don't know. I'm excited to see it either way. It's not a remake, so it's got that going for it. They showed the trailer of Nope during the opening for Batman. So that is it for the spoil-free review. If you want to get into some spoilers, it's kind of light spoilers. I'm not going to do a blow-by-blow of everything, but just kind of a general bullet points spoiler review. So if you want to see that, keep watching. So Batman, the story behind Batman. So did I say so 3 times? His family, his dad at one point was running for mayor before he and his wife were killed. His wife has a history of mental illness in the family. Her mom killed her dad, and she had a history of mental illness, of being locked up. And so when Bruce Wayne's dad was Bruce Wayne Batman, you know that, right? I'm sure you do. When Bruce Wayne's dad was running for mayor, he wanted to cover that up, but a reporter was trying to bring it to light. He had this guy Falcone try to silence the guy, and then without intending Falcone to do this, he killed the reporter. He had a lot of turmoil over it, but he was going to go to the police about it, and then supposedly, even though there's no evidence of this, Falcone had him killed. And then I think in previous iterations of Batman and Catwoman, they have this attraction, and it's kind of a little bit of a love story, unrequited, I guess, because I don't think they ever get together, but that is present in this as well. I don't think you could have Batman and Catwoman together without that kind of chemistry. So that is definitely in this movie too. And then he knows her real identity as Catwoman, but she never knows who he really is. And then Catwoman turns out so her backstory in this is different than the one that I was familiar with from Batman Returns with Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, where she's the secretary, someone tries to kill her, she goes through this horrible accident, near death, and then she becomes Catwoman. In this iteration, Catwoman is Falcone's daughter. Her mom, who worked at this club, got pregnant by Falcone. He either didn't know she was his daughter or just didn't care, you know, because he's corrupt and everything. And so that is how Catwoman is different in this movie. And then you have the Riddler. So the Riddler is this like crazed former orphan. Are you ever a former orphan? I don't know. And that is kind of one of the ties that connects them that I saw was Batman was made an orphan when his parents were killed. Catwoman was made an orphan because Falcone had murdered her mom years and years prior. And then the Riddler, we don't know where he came from. We just know that he's an orphan. He's also a forensic accountant. So he was supposed to benefit from this foundation that, I'm like hearing banging, I don't know where it's coming from, that Bruce Wayne's Wayne died, no one oversaw it, and then like criminals kind of got their hands in it, and it became just a way for them to transfer money back and forth and like do their criminal thing. And so being a forensic accountant, the Riddler, I forget his real name, like his real character's name, but he finds this out, and then he goes on this crusade inspired by Batman for like vengeance to expose all the corruption. And that's kind of the center idea of this movie. And so there's like, Batman is like this detective, and the Riddler is the serial killer because he like goes on this serial killing rampage to unmask Gotham, basically, all the corruption with the politicians. James Gordon, which if this is the early days of Batman, I know he's not Commissioner Gordon yet, but he always defers to Batman on everything. Like he takes Batman to every crime scene. And he's like, every time there's a riddle, he like looks to Batman, and Batman always solves the riddle. It's kind of funny. So the big ending, like the big final act from the Riddler is he blasts all the seawalls around the city and gets it flooded. And then while Batman is fighting all of these people that the Riddler connected with online, because he got this community together of all these like-minded, crazy people. And so when the Riddler got put behind bars, he had this call to action of all these people that were following him to go and like, all these people were being herded in this big emergency shelter while the seawalls were collapsing. And they go and try and like shoot all of these people. And then as Batman is facing one of these people, he's at like the person is asked who they are, and they said vengeance. And so then he realizes that he had this inadvertent pull on these people and like inadvertently caused all this stuff to happen by inspiring these psychopaths, and then realizes that he has to go a different direction. So I'm imagining that's going to be part of like what the sequels will be in the future. Then what they're calling the big twist ending, which again, it didn't impress me. It was just kind of like, yeah, of course, sure. Like the Joker, I think, is everybody's favorite villain. And so at the end, when the Riddler is like going crazy and sad in Arkham Asylum, his cellmate starts talking to him, and then you start to kind of see his silhouette, and you hear his voice and his laugh, and you know that it's the Joker. He's played by someone named Barry Keoghan, and I looked him up. He's from Dunkirk, which I've heard of but never seen. The Eternals, which I've heard of and never seen. So I guess they're kind of setting him up to be the next villain. I don't know. All right, my camera is running out of storage. Oh, let me pause my video. Just turned on to keep me company. So anyway, I feel like they always remake Batman every decade, and it will be to the end of time. So, yeah, I'll still go watch them, I'm sure. So that is it for my review. If you saw Batman, let me know if you agree with my review or if you have different thoughts. If you loved it, you hated it, and if you liked the video, consider giving it a like and subscribing to see more. I do movie reviews, trailer reactions. I also have a podcast called Beyond Unsolved where I talk about true crime and paranormal stuff. And with plans to doing some other podcasts in the future too. So if you want to see more from me, subscribe, stick around, and I'll see you in my next video.